Okay, terrific. Welcome. And I'm just going to put it on speaker view. Okay, that's great. Just getting used to this new way of recording. I was just listening to Dawn saying, how do we enter the sanctuary? And I was just thinking the sanctuary is our mind. Our sanctuary is here, right here in our mind. Our awakened mind is here right now. We need do nothing to get to that. So it's just interesting. There's a sections of the Course where Jesus says, you know, you can wake up right now. But basically we have a lot of fear. The ego mind says that something will happen, something will go wrong, there'll be some sort of loss by awakening right at this moment. But he always offers us the opportunity to wake up right now. So there's a message that I like to give as much as possible to remind you. And I'll say it again, which is sort of feels like the Holy Spirit's prompting me quite a bit to share with a lot of people, is that there's nothing you need to do in behaviour to be whole and complete and perfect right now. You don't have to earn your way to being a holy son of God. You don't have to behave in a certain way to be a holy son of God. You don't have to there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you can say to earn your status as God created you. God created you perfect, whole and complete. You were created that way. You are that way now, and you will always be that way. There's nothing you can ever do or say that can stop you being who you are, who you truly are, the Holy Son of God, the innocent Christ self. That is who you are, and you're that right now. So if you think that there's something that you need to do and it takes time to awaken to who you are, it's important for this message for you to understand. It's important for you to understand that this self that was created by God has nothing to do with the body doing anything in this world. It is a realization of who you truly are right now. You cannot not be yourself. So I had someone in my group say that they had fallen off the wagon, which means that they had, they thought that they had stopped practicing forgiveness, and they were angry or they were upset or they were in their fear mind. And they stopped coming to the group for a little while, and they stopped participating in some other things that the group was doing. And I reminded her that all the time that she thought she'd fallen off the wagon, that she had mucked up, she was still the Holy Son of God. You cannot get away from your perfection. You cannot leave it. Not for a moment can you be unperfect. You are perfect now. You've always been perfect. You're perfect now. You always will be. Because this perfection is who you are. You can be unaware of it, but it never goes away. You cannot fall off the wagon. It's impossible to not be your true self, because that's the only thing that's true. You can be in an awareness that is not true. If you say, I've been in my ego all day, you've been in a blank mind, a state of nothingness. Nothing's happened. He says in the Course, nothing has happened. The ego is nothing. When you're thinking of the past, your mind is blank. So if you've been upset and been in guilt and been in fear, been in judgment, nothing has happened, because not one note of heaven's song has ever been missed. So your holy, perfect self is still there all the time. You're in your judgment mind. Nothing's going on. You cannot be but your holy self. And when you are in your judgment mind, you can remind yourself that nothing is going on. Nothing's happened. Nothing's changed. Because in God, God is oneness. There's nothing but God. God is perfect love, perfection, innocence, guiltlessness, wholeness. And that's all that's here. Nothing else is real. So if you can, you just come to that in every moment. When you're beating yourself up and judging yourself for supposedly being in my ego, even that thought is a nothing thought. You cannot be in an ego. You cannot be in something that doesn't exist. It's impossible to be an ego, because an ego is nothing. You can only be your holy self. So imagine that you have your shadow. You've always got a shadow. When the sun's shining, you can see your shadow. Sometimes people use the word shadow as the darkness. On the spiritual path, they talk about this analogy. But I'd like to put a new spin on the shadow. That is your holy self. So when the sun's shining, you become aware of your holy self. So the shadow appears on the ground and you're like, oh yes, there's my shadow. That is your holy self. Now when the clouds come in, which is the ego, you may not see your holy self. You may not be aware of that shadow. But it's who you are. And as soon as the sun comes out, you become aware of it again. The most important aspect of this teaching is that you cannot get away from your perfection. There's a little video of a girl, a young girl, maybe 2 or 3, walking along the road, and she suddenly becomes aware of a shadow. And her mother is videoing her just walking along, and she sees her shadow and she gets scared of it. And she tries to run away from it. And she's yelling out to her mother, get it away from me. And she's looking at her shadow and she's running away. But the Holy Spirit taught me when I looked at that video that we can't get away. It's part of us. We can't get away from the shadow that is us, that is our holy self. And it's a little bit, so what it is that this little girl was trying to run away from something that she was. She was scared of it and running away from it, thinking it was separate to her, thinking that it could be somehow got away from. You cannot get away from your holy self. It's impossible. It's impossible for you to be sick. That's impossible. How can the Holy Son of God be sick? How can the perfection of God be sick? It's just impossible. These are truths. This is the truth, that who you are is the love of God. Who you are is just so holy and so beautiful and so all-expanding and all-encompassing. You are that. And anything you do, so when you go through your day and you think, oh, I mucked up there, you can't muck up. You cannot do anything wrong. It's impossible for you to do anything wrong, because your holiness and your perfection is what you are. So while you believe the thought, I mucked up today, you know, I got angry, or I did this, or I did that. Whatever you believe, whatever you're telling yourself, just remember, all the while you've got those thoughts in your mind, your holy self is shining. Your perfection is there. You cannot get away from it. You cannot be anything but it. You can be unaware of it while you're thinking those thoughts and believing those thoughts. So it's really good to remember that while you're in your seemingly, when people say I was in my ego today, it's important on the journey to understand what the ego is. But the only reason to understand what the ego is so you can know that it's not you. So that was what was coming through very strongly to share this morning as I opened up. As I said, I'm completely surrender to the Holy Spirit. I've surrendered my life. I never know what's going to be said on these talks. I'm generally given a bit of a guide before I talk, maybe around a lesson or something, and sometimes it doesn't come in. I'm just to talk and something comes through. So just know that there is nothing you can ever do that can cancel out the perfection of who you are. There's nothing ever that can change that. It's changeless. So you can tell yourself, I've been in my ego for 3 days, but your holy, changeless perfection is still there. This is what's so beautiful about this teaching, is it just teaches you that while we're in our ego mind, seemingly, we're in a blank state of mind. We're projecting nothingness. We're projecting images from the past. So today, first of all, I've had 2 questions given to me prior to me doing this talk, and I'd like to talk briefly on them. Well, I'll just talk on them. The first topic that I was asked to share about was greed and materialism. So the ego, anything that has greed or materialism is going to be the ego, which is a thought system. So it must be really clear what the ego is. The ego is a thought system that we are believing in. We actively join this thought system. So we have the decision maker, we have the ego thought system, and we have the Holy Spirit. And this decision maker has to join with the thoughts of the ego. So the ego has greed and materialism and idols, and it tries to work out where you're going to be happy. It has its own thought system. It's a thought system of guilt, of fear, of shame, of blame, of projection. It's a whole thought system. It's like a virus on a computer, and we are swamped. So when we come to the course, we're literally the decision maker in our mind, the witness or the observer, the one that decides who it's going to join, joins with the ego. So it's joining. It's actively, so a thought comes in, I'm guilty for this, and the decision maker says, yes, I am. And then the ego thought says, I'm guilty for not wishing my mother a Merry Christmas. And the decision maker says, yes, I'm a really bad person. So, so the ego says lots of things. It says, to be happy, I need to get everyone to agree with me and understand me. And the decision maker says, yes, yes, I agree with that. So it's really important to know you have a decision maker in your mind. So what happens, of course, is the ego always speaks first. So it's the ego is going to raise its thought system into your mind and you're going to agree with it. But what happens when you first come to the course, you're not even going to know that there's actually a decision maker in your mind that's joining with the ego thought system. You just think they're one thing. And this is what happens, is we think the thoughts, we're agreeing with the thoughts. We don't realise that we actually have something, a witness. We are actively agreeing with the thought system. So this is where this decision maker in our minds is something that we have to become aware of. Because if you can choose the Holy Spirit, then there's something that's choosing. That's why it says choose again. So when I have a thought of greed, the ego tries to get you to believe in it, and you have to actively choose not to believe in it. So the ego might say, I will feel, it speaks for you as if it's your voice, I will feel better when I have you know, a new house or a new car or something. It gets greedy. It might even say, people will respect you more, or people will respect me more, because it talks to you as if it's your voice. It talks to you as if it's you. So it says, people will respect me more if I have a really good car. They'll think that I'm popular and successful. And then the decision maker agrees with it. So initially what happens is those two, that activity of you agreeing with the thoughts that are speaking for you, that has to be first identified, that that's me. So greed and materialism is in a thought system. It's part of the ego thought system. So you can imagine a bunch of thoughts going round and round. Imagine a radio station of ego thoughts, and they're being fed to you day and night, the ego, and then you have the choice to turn the dial. So you're listening to the ego radio station all day, but you can turn it off and you can turn on a Holy Spirit radio station. So if you can do that, you have to have something in your mind that can choose differently. So you have to become aware. If I can choose the Holy Spirit, then I am not that thought system. I can actively choose something else. So it's becoming aware of, okay, this is the thought system, I'm listening to it. I don't need to. And you'll get sucked into it all the time, but this is the journey away. The journey of the mind training is to train you to stop listening to that and choose the Holy Spirit. Now, if you find it difficult to hear the Holy Spirit, just repeat one of the lessons, because all the lessons are the Holy Spirit and Jesus. They're all his thought system. All the lessons of A Course in Miracles are God's thoughts. they're all there. So if you can think, I don't hear the Holy Spirit, it does take a little bit to actually get in touch with the Holy Spirit. It took me years to become aware of what the Holy Spirit was in my mind. Some people get it instantly. They seem to do it easily. I feel like my journey was it took a long time for everything to happen. And a lot of my students now, they come into my groups and they just see my clear mind. That I had one friend come, and some of the people that come are seemingly very depressed, and they're just crying and anxious and lying down and very fearful and asking me things. And I say to them, I was exactly the same as you. I was crying. I went to a retreat one weekend and I cried the whole weekend. It's really important for my students to know that is where my mind was at. It was full of anxiety. My body was sick and I was extremely anxious. So I was right over here believing every thought that came in. A thought came in, I believed it. Another thought came in, I believed it. I was at the effect of my thoughts. Just going to close my window. So it's important to know that the ego's thought system, that it's about greed and materialism. And if you're listening to it, which means you're listening, you're deciding with that ego thought. So the greed is that I need more. Now, the reason why the ego thought system tells us we need more of things in this world is because it also plants the idea that you're in lack. And it plants, this whole thought system is based on lack, that I am lacking. And this body that the ego associates itself with it's from the moment this seemingly body is born, it starts to die. So we're surrounded by bodies that are sick and suffering and dying. So we believe, the ego says, you are the body, or it says, I am the body. And its thought system constantly tries to help you get away from suffering. But it hides the fact, under that it hides, it doesn't want you to see that it's not real, that all these thoughts are untrue. So while we listen to it, at the basis of the thought system of the ego is that I am a body and I can be affected by everything in this world. And that's why we're living so much anxiety. So it's constantly looking for things to make itself happy in the world outside it. And this mind is completely asleep. We're completely and utterly asleep when we are joining the ego. That's it. You're asleep. You're caught in a dream world of that this world is where my happiness lies. If I can just get something, I'll be happy. So you imagine, someone sitting on a donkey's back with the carrot on like a fishing line. This is what we are. We are the donkey with the carrot in front of us. And as we go forward, that carrot, we never ever reach the carrot because the carrot is always being held by somebody sitting on the back of the donkey holding it out. So this is what we have to see. The ego is the carrot and we are the donkey. That's a good analogy, actually. So only you can see for yourself, has anything ever the ego has recommended for my happiness? Has it ever worked? Have I ever received changeless, infinite happiness from what the ego has suggested? So you've got to really look at this. I'm believing these thoughts. There's a beautiful lesson in the Course. Hang on, I've just forgotten that. I'm affected only by my thoughts. He's talking about his ego thoughts, but also I guess you could even say the thoughts of God I will be affected by. So when I think with the Holy Spirit. The other thing that I'd like to share around greed and materialism, which can be very helpful if you're under the effect of the ego and you're still believing in it, and you still have a riding that horse, that carrot that the ego holds out. So say, for example, you believe that your happiness lies, or the ego tells you that your happiness lies, say, in getting a house, owning a house. Say you rent a house or you live somewhere with someone and you have this idea that when I own my own house, I will be happy. Say that's one of the things that the ego holds out in your mind, that happiness lies somewhere in the future in certain circumstances happening. So what I want you to do is I want you to remember that anything that ego holds out for you turns to dust. So anything that you value here turns to dust. And he talks about it in the Course, something about everything, all the idols will be thrown and turned to dust. So if you put your safety and happiness in a house, in owning a house, you might spend a lot of years saving up for that house and you finally get it, only for a hurricane or an earthquake or a landslide to come along and knock it down. Or it could just be eaten by ants. You know, we have these termites here that eat wood, and a lot of houses are just, you know, people discover they've got these, I think they're called white ants, and they just eat the house, and the next thing the house has been half eaten. They eat the inside of the wood, so the house sort of falls over. It's not to say that while you're here in the body that you won't have some sort of a house to give you. That Jesus says that while you're here, while we're coming out of this world, we're going to be given whatever we need. But just don't put it as your idol. So what we want to do, I've sort of talked a little bit about the ego. We need to have that decision maker and start choosing the Holy Spirit. So constantly ask. You might just go to something in the Course, lesson or part of it, and keep applying that. So just keep applying the truth to the darkness, to the illusion here, the truth, the Holy Spirit's truth. So just keep applying it every day. That's all we're asked to do. Wake up in the morning, put the Holy Spirit in charge of your day and choose. So if I get upset, if I get irritated or angry, I've chosen incorrectly. I've chosen to believe. The thoughts come in and I've actively joined it. That's okay. I can in any moment say, okay, Holy Spirit, I choose, give me a thought. So in the lessons, they ask us to apply the lesson to every situation that comes up. So anytime during the day you have an upset, just apply the lesson to it. So remember, it's all done in your mind. Everything is done in your mind, and forgiveness is correcting your thinking. It's got nothing to do with what's going on outside of you. All the mind training, the forgiveness, the Course in Miracles, the whole teaching is done all about your mind. And as you think differently, your behaviour will change. But it's not about changing behaviour. You just can't change your behaviour. You need to change your mind. This is all about choosing differently, choosing the Holy Spirit, choosing Jesus, joining with Jesus, joining with the Holy Spirit and saying, what would you have me do? Please correct me. Please help me. We have to be wrong. Every time we get upset, we have to say, I must be wrong. Choosing the ego. I want to awaken. I want the peace of God. And how do I have the peace of God? By giving up being right. And it's just a very, very gentle journey. That, as I said, if you're beating yourself up for choosing the ego, just remember, your holy self is there. It's here right now, as you listen to me. Your holiness, your perfection, your innocence and guiltlessness. You can't get away from it. It's you are. That's how you were created. So the second question that I was asked was how to meditate, and I just want to share from the Manual for Teachers. So the question was, right, let me get the question here. What is the easiest way to meditate and make contact with the spirit? Joel Goldsmith used to feel a click and knew he'd made contact. Right, well, I'll just share a little bit about my way. First of all, there's a section in the Manual for Teachers, and it's number 16, how should the teacher of God spend his day? There's many Course in Miracles teachers that talk about this, so this is a way to join. But I found the most powerful, for me, the most powerful way to join is through a lesson 183, which is I call God's name. I call upon God's name and on my own. Now I've done a whole video set from this particular lesson. I've done a retreat, held a retreat on it. Even if you can do this, calling God's name. I think it's 183 from memory. I know someone's just put, I think it's 193. Might be wrong. Let me see. Lesson 183, I call upon God's name and on my own. So the way this lesson was given to me, but what happened for me was I just started calling out Father in the car as I was driving along. I just opened up and I felt this connection, and I didn't hear a click, but it's like something connected. And the minute I say the word Father, I'm there. I'm connected into. So it's this sort of surrendering, this asking, this calling. So whatever word works for you, whether it be Father or Holy Father or God or love or guiltlessness or sinlessness, whatever word you use to connect, that's the way I have joined with God, by calling to him. And we might use a word, but it's really coming from the heart. It's coming from, I want to join with you, God. I want to know you, God. I love you. I want to be part of you. I want your peace. I want your peace above all else. I want to know my holy self. I want to know the holiness of everyone. I want to experience this love. I want to be away from this false thought system. I desire your love above all else. I want your holy vision above all else. There's nothing in this world that I want other than to experience my holy self. I want to join with you. I want to become one with this love. So it comes from this calling out, this dedication and commitment to nothing else. I want nothing else. There's nothing else that I want. I completely surrender everything to you. I give up. I give up wanting anything from this world. I know that every little need that I have will be given me. But as far as my desire, I just desire to know you, to fall into and rest in this holy love. So it's just this calling out and this prayer. Just that's the way to join. And you can just sit and call, Father. 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 Okay, so I just joined with God. I could stay there for hours. It's so beautiful. It's really hard to bring myself back. It's so beautiful. It's like when you join there, it's hard to remove. So it's that simple. Did I have to do anything to join? I guess what I had to do was set my intention, is to call out, just had to choose. That's it. It's as simple as that. I just had to choose. It didn't take me years of study. I just had to choose. That's it. So in the manual for teachers, how should a teacher of God spend the day? So it says just about number 4, it talks about that a teacher of God could be in a situation that doesn't foster quiet when he awakes. So let him remember that he chooses to spend time with God as soon as possible, and let him do so. So every morning we must commit to this until you can connect deeply, immediately with God in your mind. You need to practice. We have to practice this. Is mind training. We're training ourselves. So unless you do it, it's not going to happen. You have to set time aside for this. You have to want the peace of God. You have to practice this until it's natural. So the duration is not the major concern. So in other words, you don't have to sit for an hour to connect with God. You saw how I connected in with one word. The minute I said Father, I was connected. One can easily sit an hour with closed eyes and accomplish nothing. One can easily give God only an instant, and in that instant join with him completely. So here's Jesus telling us this is what we can do. Perhaps the one generalisation that can be made is this: as soon as possible after waking, take your quiet time, continuing a minute or two after you begin to find it difficult. Okay, so after you wake up, if you can lie there in your bed and not get up, just stay lying down with your head on the pillow. as you wake up. And just choose God. Just join with him. Just bring to your mind God. You can call his name, or you can just quietly join. Say, I want to know you, God. Now, it says here, if you start to find it difficult, just continue a minute or two after that. So if you feel, I'm not getting anything, I'm not joining, feels like nothing's going on, just continue a minute or two. You may find that the difficulty will diminish and drop away. If not, that is the time to stop. Okay, so just do what he asks. This is Jesus. So if you can imagine, you're in an ashram, Jesus is the teacher, he's sitting in a meditation position. I sometimes do this because it's good to help you realise, because we do idolise gurus here and we do take instruction from them. So imagine Jesus, your guru, you're in an ashram, you're with all the other Course in Miracles students, we're all sitting around in a big circle and Jesus is sitting on the chair like Muji or other spiritual teachers. And these are the words he's telling us. And this is what he's saying. He's saying every morning as you wake up, as soon as possible when you wake up, spend time with God. Now, this is a practice. It may not happen straight away, and it may, and you may join sometimes easily, and it might be difficult other times. The most important thing is to not judge yourself. Whatever you do on this journey, don't judge yourself, because Jesus says you can't know your advances from your retreats. He tells us what we think of retreats are our advances, and what we think of our advances are actually our retreats. So we have to realise that we have got no bloody idea. That's an Australian slang word. We have no bloody idea about what's working for us. So don't judge yourself. Just do it and don't judge it. So if it didn't work, you just get up and you say, I'll try again tonight. When I get into bed and I spend some quiet time, I'll connect in again today. So just keep doing it. Just keep working on it. Keep saying your lesson. Keep doing whatever you need to do. Keep, hang on. Just keep doing what you're doing. The same procedure should be followed at night. Perhaps your quiet time should be fairly early in the evening, if it is not feasible for you to take it just before going to sleep. It is not wise to lie down for it. It is better to sit up in whatever position you prefer. Okay, so he's saying here, I'm not sure whether he's saying to do this in the morning or at night, but I have found it better to lie down for me to do this. But I know on my journey, I dedicated 2 years to completely undoing every grievance in my mind, every upset, and completely dedicating my life to undoing the ego. And I used to wake up a bit earlier before I went to work. I'd wake up an hour earlier. I would meditate for half an hour. And I would read my lesson, and I would spend time joining with God, trying to join, doing it as best I could. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. It didn't matter. It was my intention. I didn't. Sometimes I judged myself, and sometimes I reminded myself that I couldn't judge myself because I couldn't know. So sit up in whatever position you prefer. Having gone through the workbook, you must have come to some conclusions in this respect. If possible, however, just before going to sleep is a desirable time to devote to God. It sets your mind into a pattern of rest and orients you away from fear. Okay, so he's asking us that in the evening to sit up and do some sort of connection to God. And then again, if possible, before going to sleep, it is a desirable time to devote to God. So devote to God. God, I devote myself to you. God, I want to join with you. Give your devotion. Tell God your prayer. Call in God. It sets your mind into a pattern of rest and orients you away from fear. If it is expedient to spend this time earlier, at least be sure that you do not forget a brief period, not more than a moment will do, in which you close your eyes and think of God. Okay, this is another beautiful part. There is one thought in particular that should be remembered throughout the day. It is a thought of pure joy, a thought of peace, a thought of limitless release. Limitless because all things are freed within it. You think you made a place of safety for yourself. He's talking about this. We think we made this world up to feel safe. You think you made a power that can save you from all the fearful things you see in dreams. It is not so. Your safety lies not there. So we need to give up trying to feel safe in this world. There's no safety in anything here. What you give up is merely the illusion of protecting illusions. And it is this you fear, and only this. How foolish to be so afraid of nothing. Nothing at all. So we've got to remember that this world, there's no safety here. This world is in our minds and can be changed by our limitless Christ mind. But first of all, before we get to this understanding of how this world is in our mind, we have to see what the ego is holding out as what is telling us where our safety is. Your defences will not work, but you are not in danger. You have no need of them. Recognise this and they will disappear. So it's just telling us to recognise that what we've put as our safety. He says all through the course, you are not a body, you are spirit. You are as God created you. And only then will you accept your real protection. So your protection is your true self, your holy self, your eternal spirit. That's what we are. We're not this little body that's born and dies and suffers. We're not this. And in an awakened state, we recognize, that's what we wake up to, that I'm not a body. We join in an awakened mind. We join God's mind. We join the limitless, expansive mind of love. And this is where we are. And when you call to God, or when you join God in those particular times, you're joining in your mind, your true mind. So when you connect to God in your mind, if you have connected at some stage with this limitless love and you feel this amazing peace, if you've experienced that even for a second, that has to be in you. You have to remind yourself, if you've experienced this, it's in your mind, and you can have that as your experience 24/7. You can live in this mind of God. You can live comfortably. There's no sacrifice living in God's mind. Hi, Regina. So I will finish off the teaching on that. I was going to do a teaching on lesson 70 today, but I actually think I don't really have enough time to go through that in the detail that I'd like to. So I'm going to probably put that off for another day. What I'm going to do now is just read a couple of prayers from the back of the Course in Miracles, which are the later workbook lessons. And these, I'm just going to open it and read them, and just let this, what we've been talking about, is joining with God. So it's really, first of all, it comes from a dedication and a commitment, calling out, I want to know you, God. I want to join with you. Above all else, I want to see as you see. I want to love as you love. I want to have peace. He talks about the limitless love, this limitless joy. He wants us to forget everything else, let all the past and future thoughts go. He just wants us to sit and expand our mind into this emptiness of future and past thoughts, which is the ego. He wants us to be empty and just come to God with an empty mind, forget everything we've ever learnt, everything we've ever believed, or concepts, beliefs. He wants us just to let everything go. Just let everything go and just come now with an empty mind and just call for God. So just in the last few minutes as we join here, I'm going to just read very slowly. Let me remember that my goal is God. All that is needed is to train our minds to overlook all little senseless aims and to remember that our goal is God. His memory is hidden in our minds, obscured, but by our pointless little goals, which offer nothing and do not exist. Shall we continue to allow God's grace to shine in unawareness, while the toys and trinkets of the world are sought instead? God is our only goal, our only love. We have no aim but to remember him. Our goal is but to follow in the way that leads to you. We have no goal but this. What could we want but to remember you? What could we seek but our identity? Father, forgiveness is your chosen means for our salvation. Let us not forget today that we can have no will but yours, and thus our purpose must be yours as well, for we would reach the peace you will for us. And so, our Father, would we come to you in your appointed way? We have no goal except to hear your voice and find the way your sacred word has pointed out to us. Father, would I pass this day with you? Your Son has not forgotten you. The peace you gave him is still in his mind, and it is there I choose to spend today. Father, I did not make myself, although in my insanity I thought I did. Yet as your thought, I have not left my source, remaining part of who created me. Your Son, my Father, calls on you today. Let me remember you created me. Let me remember my identity, and let my sinlessness arise again before Christ's vision, through which I would look upon my brothers and myself today. So beautiful to end with those beautiful prayers, professing our joining with God and who we are. So thank you everyone for joining with me today. I love you, I bless you, and I honour you as a Christ self that you are. That's all I see, nothing else. The beautiful Christ before me. I've had healed vision for many years now, so I can only see that. A beautiful, innocent, sinless, guiltless, whole, complete, radiant child of God. That's all I see. So thank you and bless you, and have a beautiful week. Bye-bye.